All right, it is Digging for Wisdom, and we are talking week 1 of the high school football season. Boy, I hope these high school stadiums paid their electric bill, because them Friday night lights are coming on, and you're staying on for 5, 6, 7 hours. You got to clean up the place afterwards, especially when the Diggs family gets to start chucking popcorn all over the place. I mean, will you? But me and Diggs are going to talk about some week 1 games, man. We've been waiting all summer to talk about this stuff. Diggs, first of all, the excitement you must have. I know I have it. I've been having it this whole weekend, especially since we did the 2 preview shows, of actually getting out and going to see some of these games. And we already know that Friday you're super excited about playing the East, but overall, how excited are you about this season getting underway?
I am, on Sundays, they have that NFL song, waiting all day for Sunday night. We're a different creed here. We're waiting all day for Friday night and Thursday night and maybe some Saturday afternoons. I know you and I are going to be at the same places quite a bit this weekend.
That's true.
I think, weirdly enough, I'm probably most excited about a game where you've called it done for the weekend. You're done. You're at the NBC studios taping everything, getting everything ready. But Saturday night, Melissa versus Little Rock Parkview, I think is going to be a really fun game, to kind of end things. And usually this is that game is usually the Tom Landry Classic, that kind of that Saturday night game at Allen. But I guess we got away with that. We're now doing a pediatric cancer fundraiser, and Melissa's taking the Saturday night game and bringing in Arkansas's best teams. And we'll talk about that game, but that's going to be a very fun game. But even Thursday, we're going to the Star Wizzy. We're going to have some fun, and we're going to be having all kinds of analysis here to get you ready on this. If you're listening to this on your way to the Star, we will have you ready, because we're going to talk about that game. We're going to talk about the game on Saturday. That'll be at the Star, which you and I will be at before you head off to the NBC studios and make magic. I'm excited, Ward. I think I'm excited. And of course, the reigning and defending 6A basketball state champions will go on the gridiron, and we'll do something there, and we're going to have fun in Royce City, which I don't know if that's in Hunt County or Rockwall County or Collin County. It's in all the counties, but we're going east.
Exactly. Google
right across the street from Buc-ee's.
Google's Maps will get you there. And stop in there and use one of their clean restrooms. Boy, they're clean as Board of Health. I know that, as I'm a father of 2 sons, single father of 2 sons, so I know how bathrooms cannot be clean. But Diggs, one thing people can't say about us, I mean, they may say our analysis are off and all this other stuff, but they can't say we're not smart people. We're no dummies, because me and you both saw 100 degrees on the calendar for the end of the week, and we picked 2 air-conditioned places. Pretty smart guy. I'm sending the other guys out there to get that sweat going. Look at that. He's falling apart over there. He's all right. Don't worry about it, Dixie. Keep that thing straight. But, hey, last week
Ward, you called me smart, and I fell.
That's right. Nobody ever wanted to accuse you of that. But you are the professor. And what the professor asked you for last week was some questions that he could handle and answer. And I believe this week the old mailbox got something to say. So what do we got in the mailbag?
We got in the mailbag. Apparently, we rankled some feathers last week, or at least I did. You never rankle feathers, Warb. It's me. Last week, we were talking about in 11-6A whether or not Duncanville and DeSoto, if there's going to be a point where people are just like, we're not going to play them anymore, and we're done with that. And the mailbag is basically, is there something you have against Duncanville and DeSoto? Why aren't you talking about Aledo and Gunter and Anna and some of these other, Carthage and some of these other teams, when you are talking about, the kind of teams that people are tired of? And I'd love to address that. It's a great question. I am tired of all those other teams. I think I've been historically saying I'm tired of Aledo and Gunter. I think we've had Gunter and Canadian like 8 of the last 9 years in the state semifinals. I mean, it gets a little bit old here and there. So it's not just Duncanville and DeSoto. So, Ward, what I want to do right now, I'm going to start my proposal. I'm going to use this mailbag to start my proposal. I want us to form a 7A relegation league, because everybody's talking about 7A, and we want to do 7A and this, that, and the other. But the UIL came out at the state coaching convention and said, well, we probably need about 100 more teams to be able to make 7A reality. Don't worry about that, UIL. Come dig for wisdom with us. We're going to take care of this for you. What I want to do, Wizzy, 32 teams in 7A, and we're going to take the top 24 teams in 6A. We're going to take a 2-year average weight. So if you win a state championship, we're going to give you 16 points. If you get to the finals, we're going to give you 8 points. If you make it state semifinals, we get you 8 points. And we're going to go so on down, and we're going to take the highest 24 teams when we get the points. You're going to get 16 for state championship, 8 for state semifinals, and 4 for being a regional finalist or regional winner. And we're going to add them up. And at the end of the 2-year realignment cycle, whoever our top 24 teams are, they're going to 7A. We're just going to go ahead and put you up there. And then we're going to take the top 4 teams using the same way in 5A. We're going to go ahead and move them up to 7A. Sorry, guys, you're going up to 7A. And we're going to have this 32-team super class. And we're just going to do it regionally. We're going to have 4 8-team districts. I'm sorry if we got, the Harlingen and we got Waco in the same district. Sorry about that. It's just the way it's going to be. You're going to make your money because we're going to get you on TV. We're going to get you some TV rights. We got somebody right here, Wizzy. Look at Wizzy. He's over there. He's got the TV rights. He'll take care of all this kind of a thing. And then everybody else has got to move up. If you win a state championship or you make it to the state finals, you got to move up a classification because at what point is Gunter beating up people in 3A Division II for 10 out of the last 12 years? It's unfair. Let's move them up a little bit. Alito, like 11 of the last 14 years, they've won a state championship. We got to move them up. DeSoto actually kind of Coach Mathis blasted Alito in the Dallas Morning News, saying he'd like to see Alito play some of these 6A teams. Let's see how they do against the Atascocitas and the Galena Parks of the world. And as you know, when you play Galena Park, not North Shore, but Galena Park High, that's when you better put those chin straps up because when you got Galena Park High on the schedule, it's going to be something serious. So I think it's not just Duncanville and DeSoto. I want to have a 7A relegation league, and then if you don't make the playoffs, if you're like in last place in the relegation league, you can come back down. We'll take care of that. But if you're succeeding at 7A, let's do it, Wizzy. That's my way of handling that.
I tell you what, Diggsy didn't tell me any of this before we got on here. I was listening very intently, and I kind of like the regulation type stuff, and it takes you over to European soccer leagues and whatnot. I like the moving up and moving down, and of course, most of these teams if you're going to call them 7A, most of these teams are big schools, so the travel won't be a problem. They'll have enough money to gas up the trucks and send them on their way to wherever we're going. I'm assuming a lot of these. Well, no, you'd still have home district games, right? That Harlingen team you're talking about would have to come all the way up here and play in Duncanville. They probably have to leave Thursday to get here for a Friday game, but that's life. What's school anyway? They can get that caught up on that the next day. So
you got Duncanville scheduling Georgia and all these other out-of-state teams. They can handle Harlingen, so we can take care of that. And because we only got 32 teams, Ward, what I'm going to do, I'm going to be nice to our friends out there. I'm going to give them an 11th football game. They can have like an out-of-state game to get them ready for the year. Then there's 3 non-district. They'll have their 7 district games, and they'll have 5 games in the playoffs, and that's just what we're going to do. We're going to have 7A. It's going to be relegation style. The best of the best. It's going to be an elite league, and every game. Think about like the 8 best teams in our area. You got South Lake Carroll, Allen, Coppell, Duncanville, DeSoto. They're all in the same district, Ward. Week after week, that's all your cameras are going to be at. I mean, everybody's going to be fighting to watch those games. The ticket sales are going to be through the roof, so it's going to pay for itself. So people are worried about gas and all that kind of stuff. Everybody else who's average and bad, you got your regular districts. We'll put you where you're going to be. But 7A super district, let's make it happen, Ward.
Interesting. I like this, man. I'm going to cut this part out, send it down to Austin to the UIL, see what they can think on it for a couple of years. They got 2 years to think on it, but I kind of like it. Boy, you get me excited talking about that regulation type stuff. I like to see people going up and down. I'm sure coaches will use some strategies too. Oh boy, my junior and senior class kind of stink. Let me go ahead and tank it for 2 years and bounce back in the lower district and really put the foot to backside after I get myself together. But guess what, Diggs? We have a complete year to think about football right now in 2024 instead of thinking about 2026. So let's start talking about teams that, man, you probably think are going to win, but you're looking for a little bit extra. We call that style points. Diggsy, talk to me about what some of these teams that you think need to come out there and show you something, not only win, but show you something. And we'll start with Byron Nelson and their game with
Yeah,
Friendship.
I need a fancy graphic. We could have gotten a model or something. We're gonna start clipping. We're gonna start doing like intros and fancy like little 30-second things. We're gonna have like peacocks flapping around and say style points. We're going fancy Wizzy. We're gonna do it. But there are some games. You scratch your head and you're like, why is this team playing this team in the first couple of weeks? So all we can really get out of it is style points. So there's about 20 games I'm going to be looking at. We're not going to really go in-depth analysis on it. I think there's a pretty clear underdog and a pretty clear favorite. But all we can do in these games, because there is a clear favorite and a clear underdog, is it is style points. So it's like you have a hard time to go up our radar when you're playing these kind of games, but you can definitely go down our radar. If you don't get these style points that we want to see in these games,
Right.
it could impact you in the rankings next week. It could impact our big picture view of you. And a lot of these teams that we're going to talk about have nine teams in their district, so they only have 2 games to get ready for that. So it's even more of a head scratcher when you consider it. But you mentioned Byron Nelson, and Friendship is not a bad team. They're a powerhouse out in West Texas. But as you've seen, Ward, when we have the West Texas teams versus the DFW teams, it's almost always a DFW whitewash. We take care of business and we kick them out. And a lot of those West Texas teams are coming out here. You got Odessa Permian playing Plano this week. You got Midland Legacy coming out here to play Allen this week. And now you got Friendship and Byron Nelson. And for me, Byron Nelson is one of those teams we kind of hemmed and hawed about in our campfire and in our preview, because they are a team that we were looking, are they going to be elite? Are they going to take that next step? And if they are, they got to take care of Friendship. If they're playing a 42-35 kind of a game, it kind of maybe lets us know that Friendship may be way better than we thought, or maybe something about Byron Nelson isn't what we thought they would be. So that, I'm looking for style points. Same thing with South Lake Carroll and Midland. Talk about these West Texas games. South Lake Carroll gets nothing out of this game against Midland, but if this game ends up 49-35 or something, we're going to be scratching our heads at the end of it, going, what's wrong with Carroll? So I want to see the style points out of Carroll. Crowley versus Birdville. This is a 6A versus a 5A game. Crowley is a team that a lot of people thought can maybe go 9-0 and then play North Crowley for the district championship. And imagine that place on a Thursday night, North Crowley versus Crowley for a district championship with maybe 8-1 versus 9-0, because I don't think North Crowley's going to beat DeSoto. But Crowley against Birdville, I got to see the style points there.
It'll be 8-1
I know
versus
this is
8-1. By the way, it'll be 8-1 versus 8-1 because Crowley's inviting North Shore up the week 2.
North Shore, yeah, they ain't winning that game. Trinity against Straight Jesuit, one of your games that you like to maybe get a little double dip on. Trinity should be a big favorite, but I got to see it because I have a little bit of trust issues with Trinity. Jesuit against Hebron, same thing. Jesuit should be a favorite against Hebron, but Hebron's got Patrick Creighton Jr. at quarterback, a lot of young kids coming up. So if Hebron can keep it close to Jesuit, I think that might give us a little bit of insight about them. Arlington Bowie against your team, Wizzy, Flower Mound, the mighty Jaguars. We've been high on Arlington Bowie in our we ranked them. I think we have number 24, number 25. So you got to put away Flower Mound, but Flower Mound, they're scrappy, they're going to play hard. So if Arlington Bowie can't do it, maybe we're wrong about them. Forney against Lake Highlands. That's another one. Lake Highlands is down this year, or so we think. So Forney should take care of business in this game, but I want to see those style points.
We've been hyping up Forney all summer as well, so they need to show something to deserve the hype we've given them.
Coach Fleener loves earning those style points, so we'll find out if he can do it in week 1. Richland against Haltom. We've been talking about, this is a Birdville ISD battle. You got kind of an intra-district rivalry. I know a lot of people don't think of Richland and Haltom in the same district, but they're all the same, or same ISD, I should say.
Yeah.
It's like if we had the Colony play Hebron. I don't think that game's ever happened in football, but Louisville ISD violence. You can't regulate it when it happens. We talked about that last week when Louisville ISD teams play each other. Throw out the record book, Ward. Same thing with these Birdville ISD teams. When they play each other, got to throw out the record book, but you can't throw out the style points book. I want to see style points. Richland. Longview versus Lufkin. Longview's been one of those teams we've had a lot of questions on. So can they earn the style points in week 1? Rockwell Heath versus Highland Park. That's a game we're going to talk about in the warm-up. So make sure you watch the warm-up on all of our social media channels. Can Highland Park proved themselves as being a 5A Division I team to keep an eye on. How about Skyline and North Forney? North Forney, by all accounts, had a kind of a stinker of a scrimmage against Lancaster. So I expect North Forney to come back and take care of business against Skyline. So I'm looking for style points there. Cedar Hill versus Midlothian. How about Cedar Hill as being a team that we're very high on? A lot of people think Midlothian's going to be a little bit down. So Cedar Hill really should take care of business against Midlothian. So I'm looking for style points there. Waxahachie versus Ennis. This is a game that I know you were at a couple of years ago, and you said you fell asleep at it.
Come on now. But it is number 103, and it's a, what is it, 50-50-2 as far as the record goes. So you want to see some style points out of Wax because they've been playing 6A ball for quite some time now, and they should be able to handle Ennis, right?
They should. Even a state-ranked Ennis team. It's funny on some of the graphics I see because this is one of the TV games. It's like number 24 Ennis versus unranked Waxahachie. And I'm thinking, Waxahachie's probably a 2 to 3 score favorite in this game. So I want to see those style points, Waxahachie. Everybody's talking about that 10th grader from Henderson, Nevada. It's time to perform against Ennis. Then we got Fort Worth Brewer against Saginaw. Saginaw is in one of those easier districts. Fort Worth Brewer is not so much in an easy district. I got to see style points out of Fort Worth Brewer. And Saginaw, this is their chance to maybe make a claim that they're going to be a little bit better than they think. What about Sherman versus Denison, the Battle of the Axe? Some people call it Texoma. I call it North DFW, Ward. Are you sending a camera crew out to that game?
I'm not. It's too much gas. I can't do it.
Too much gas to head up that far. But you can.
We'll catch it from a Texoma
can send them to Choctaw or something. Well, like you can give them a $20 voucher and say, okay, double or nothing. Here's your trip.
They'll never make the game. They'll never make the game. They'll just sit there all day long if they get on the heat.
Well, some coaches have done that too and gotten in a little bit of trouble, but that's neither here nor there. What about Burleson Centennial versus Burleson? Being a coach on the Red River is not easy. It's just not easy. Burleson Centennial versus Burleson. Burleson Centennial should be a big favorite. I want style points, Burleson Centennial. I got to see it. They're getting rid of the offense. They're changing the offense up. So, first week, what is it going to look like? Burleson's got a new coach over there. Burleson Centennial's got a new offense. Style points. What about Timberview and Kimball?
Yeah, that's
give yourself a boot.
Go ahead.
Coach
Kimball, we've been talking a lot about
give
Kimball.
Somebody a boot. Yeah, we have talked a lot about Kimball, but Timberview, Timberview should be a big favorite over Kimball. So can you beat Kimball badly in week 1? We're going to find out. South Oak Cliff versus North Shore. This is kind of to you, Ward. What kind of style points would you be looking for as a Houston analyst in a North Shore versus South Oak Cliff game?
North Shore's got to get 3 scores on them. They have to, especially when they're bringing them down there. Obviously, Sock is playing this because they're not going to be playing anybody else once they get in the district play. So they got to, if it's a North Shore, you got to see 3-score win at least. So
if it's 28-27 or something, are you kicking them out of the rankings? Are you going to email every coach personally and say, North Shore, we're done with them. They're done. The dynasty is over.
Drop them below Tascasita for a couple weeks.
That's right. Let them feel that pain until they play in district. Panther Creek and Lake Worth is another game. Panther Creek, we're talking all about Panther Creek. Everybody's talking about Panther Creek. A lot of people are saying that this is the Frisco ISD school that can finally give Frisco ISD a state championship. You got to beat some Bullfrogs if you're going to be a state champion. So Panther Creek, looking for style points. And then Lake Dallas versus Denton. Lake Dallas dropped. This was a district game last year. Now we're going to play it in non-district. Lake Dallas took care of business last year. Can they do it again with all the seniors they've got coming back? I'm looking for style points, Ward, and I'm going to grade.
This is big. And you are going to grade. You're going to be moving people up and down, especially that first one you talked about, which was Byron Nelson. If you watched the show last week, you had even Travis Pride on there saying when people were asking him about, you got kids graduating. At this point, hopefully we're known as a program, and that and not just a good team that has good players, that we're a program that turns this thing out week in and week out. So beating Friendship by as many points as Diggs wants them to, make them as program, make them be elite like they want to be. There's also some games that you want to take a look at that you're a little bit nervous for the favorite to win. They're called the old upset watch. And who do we have on the upset watch?
Well, first one, we got Mansfield Lake Ridge against Frisco Reedy. Mansfield Lake Ridge is a team that went 0-10 last year, but they were pretty much decimated with injuries. everybody's supposed to be coming back. They don't have a lot of depth, but I think week one is a good chance. They're going to be as healthy as they should be theoretically in week one. Then you got Frisco Reedy, who's had a couple of kids transfer out. I think if we were kind of going through from what we were looking at last year, Frisco Reedy should be a 4 to 5 touchdown favorite in this game. I got this on upset watch. I think Reedy's going to win this game, but it would not shock me at all for Lake Ridge to make this game very close or pull it out. So that's a game I've got on upset watch. How about Timber Creek against Rock Hill? Rock Hill is one of those teams that is sneaky good. I mean, last year they had a lot of quality losses. They did beat my Plano East Panthers pretty handily. And then they played Prosper, as good as just about anybody else in that district played Prosper. That's a rivalry game. And now you got Keller Timber Creek. They're in a very hard district. They graduated heavy. What's going to happen there? I think Rock Hill has a really good chance. I think a lot of people would have Timber Creek as a big favorite. I think Rock Hill has a really good chance in that game. Ward, we talked about it last week. We are very skeptical on Louisville right now, and Louisville against Mansfield Summit. They're playing a 5A Division II school. A lot of young kids at Louisville. What's going to happen in that game? I think Mansfield Summit has the athletes. They got their quarterback coming back. They got a couple of key defensive cogs coming back. That's a game I've got on upset watch because Louisville, we just don't know what we're going to get out of that. Where is that program? Because at the end of last season, they looked like they were in a tailspin against Allen in that game. Rockwall versus Richardson Berkner. I think a lot of people would have Rockwall as a big favorite in that game. We talked about it several times that Coach Bryan is very aware of his perception that he has never won a non-district or a playoff game. He's only won games within his district. So this is a good chance against a Rockwall team that there's a lot of questions about right now. Richardson Berkner theoretically, again, is as healthy as they're going to be. Last year they had some injury problems. I think that's a game on upset watch. Rockwall should be the favorite. Prosper Walnut Grove against Newman Smith. This is a game where we got Newman Smith as our number one team in that district, potentially a 10-0 run if they can get past this game. Then you got Walnut Grove, Prosper Walnut Grove, who's just got everybody back their first year in UIL. They got that Prosper ISD infrastructure, beautiful stadium and all the support. They got a beautiful high school over there, but they are pretty much expected to do nothing in their district because you got Anna and Frisco Emerson and Lovejoy and all Melissa and all those teams. That is a game that I think we could be looking at the end of the year that Prosper Rock Hill, a team that maybe gets 5th or 6th in that district, beats a number one team and go, man, that district is tough. So I think that could be a potential upset watch. What about Arlington Seguin and North Mesquite? North Mesquite is one of those teams year after year. We're like, Wizzy, I think North Mesquite can break through this year. But then we look at their district and go, nah, they're not breaking through. They're not breaking through against Highland Park and Forney and Lancaster and Longview and all those teams. But now in their district, I think a lot of confidence is happening over there. So I think they could pull off an upset against Arlington Seguin. Aubrey versus Sunnyvale. Sunnyvale is a team that I think a lot of people kind of were very high on, but they had a high name transfer out. Aubrey's got a couple of people transferring in. So I think if you look on paper, a lot of people thought that Sunnyvale might be the favorite there. I think Aubrey has a really good chance to win that game. And my last game for upset watch, Glen Rose versus Grandview. I think a lot of people would say Glen Rose, a team that beat Gilmer last year, or they beat somebody last year. I think actually they beat Carthage last year. They beat somebody.
They did.
One of them good teams. One of those East Texas good teams. They pulled an upset on. But then you got that's how much I care about East Texas football. It's just upset watch.
I wish
but the Grandview Zebras can never count out the Grandview Zebras.
I wish you cared less about East Texas football. They wouldn't show up in your rankings all the time. I don't know, DFW flies all over the map, according to you. Listen, let me take a look at some of your upset picks that you were just ones to look out for. You talked about Walnut Grove. They played Gunner good for a half of that last year, and that was just about the first time that team stepped on a field, super regulated football, and not playing a road schedule, and they hung with them in the first half. So I can see where you're going there. But when you talk about that, you talk a lot about Prosper ISD. I feel like you're big on Prosper ISD, like really big. You like – I know why you're high on Rock Hill because they beat your Plano East team as if they stole something. So all of a sudden that's stuck in your head. Prosper we're always high on. Walnut Grove, they're up and coming here. This could be a big year for Prosper ISD, yes?
Yeah, it really could. They got Jeff Smith over there, who is over at Plano ISD. He's come back over there, so and they got so much talent and so much growth coming into things that they have to be a team to be. If you're in Prosper ISD, you're kind of a little bit ahead of schedule when it comes to that. We know Prosper ISD is offensive line university when it comes to that stuff. So what's going to happen over there with those schools and those teams? Yeah, I think you have to be considered a just an underdog, or you have to be considered kind of a dark horse, not an underdog. They're
Right.
going to be an underdog in that district, but they're a dark horse underdog in that district because they do have a lot of talent over there, and they got a lot of kids in that program that that may have been thought they were going to Prosper High, so they moved into Prosper, and then they get put over into the Rock Hill or the Walnut Grove territory. So you've got some really good talent in all three of those schools. That area is just growing like wildfire. So I think Walnut Grove is that team that is going to be, under the radar in that district, but is going to be really good. I don't think they're going to get a win over the Big Four, but they could certainly, take a win over Denison potentially. And if anybody's having a bad day, Walnut Grove could jump up because Walnut Grove, they had the ups and downs last year. They played Anna and got killed, but they played Salina pretty close. So, and then Salina beat Anna. So there you have some head scratchers there. So Walnut Grove is absolutely a very dangerous team in that District 4 or 5A Division 2. And now that I look at the Glen Rose schedule from last year, they didn't beat any of those teams. They beat West Plains. They got there. Glen Rose made it to the state semifinals, but they lost to Gilmer 79-42.
Yes,
so
they got beat pretty badly in that one. Up in
and
Prosper.
Gilmer beat Carthage. So that's what
there
happened.
you go. There you go. One of our warm rival podcasts call that team Cartilage. It always gets me. Oh, Cartilage. They beat Cartilage? That's pretty good. Hey, let's get into some real deal games that you really want to break down. And we'll start with the team that we saw go up and down the field with Trinity and Trinity's last playoff game, score for score there. And they're coming to town to take on Allen, or Allen's actually going out there, I believe. But talk to me about that game. What you see happening. Can Allen get – I'm not going to say style points because they just need to get a win here.
They do. I think that game, if I remember right, you Google it, Ward, but I think it's actually in Melissa. I think it's in some sort of, I think it's part of the 2-night pediatric cancer thing over there, which is weird that Midland is not only coming up here, but instead of going to Allen Stadium, they're going to Melissa Stadium. They come all the way here to play in a 5A stadium. What's wrong with Midland Legacy? But, you talked about them, and that game against Trinity last year really stuck in my mind. And this is a game that I believe is a rematch of the playoffs last year, and that went up and down for a while until Allen finally got up a couple of scores on Midland Legacy. So I think we're going to see a shootout in this game. Allen disappointed a lot of people in the scrimmage, and I know it's just scrimmages. A lot of people have opinions on scrimmages, but from what people say, they looked really bad against North Crowley. Now, North Crowley may just be that good this year, but I think I heard that they scored like 10 touchdowns on Allen. So if Allen's defense is struggling, and now you got Midland Legacy in week one, who's got a really good offense, again, this is one of those upset kind of watches, but I think Allen will take care of business as a homestanding team. I think it'll be a 49-35, 49-42 kind of a game, but Allen's not losing in week one, whether it's in Melissa, Midland, doesn't matter. They're gonna take care of business. But Midland Legacy, with that offense, and I commend Midland Legacy for taking on these kind of games because they know that if they're going to be taken seriously, they got to beat some DFW teams consistently and make those runs. And they can. We see it last year, and they've had a couple of DFW wins in the past, but you still got to be consistent. And they haven't got that consistency. So they're going to try a couple more cracks in non-district. I commend that.
I do commend that too. It's almost like a reverse, or it's like a sock thing. You're probably not going to get as tested as you will in the playoffs. So make sure you get tested in the non-district. So that was pretty cool. Another team coming to town is Odessa Permian. They're taking on Plano. Tell me what you feel in this case. So it's interesting because Plano had such struggles in the last couple of years. Those Plano ISD struggling to get in the playoffs, except for East. But tell me how you feel about Plano and Permian.
Yeah, this is a game that's really a head scratcher to me because I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit, Ward, and share some information that maybe people didn't know. But when I was in elementary school, I was a dually dragon in elementary school, Plano ISD. So we're talking about 1985, 86, 87, 88. That time, that was the heyday of Plano football. I know that's even before you, but one of the big rivalries was Mojo versus Plano. So this is two teams that have basically they've gone by the wayside as far as their success goes, but they're kind of dialing it back. To me, I'm a little disappointed that Plano scheduled this game because there are so many teams in this area they could be playing that they're going to waste a year and year, a home and home to go out to Odessa Permian one year and to have Odessa Permian come here one year. And I don't think it really benefits them. They need to be challenging themselves with local area teams. So I'm a little confused by this kind of a game for Plano and their scheduling purposes. I get that the alumni are going to love it. I remember, I think it was in fourth grade, Permian, maybe in '87, Permian and Plano were playing in the state semifinals, and I remember everybody was the east side of Plano was cheering against Plano because we hate Plano over here in East Plano, but I was actually cheering for them as I wanted to see Plano win a state championship and beat Mojo. I remember an art class drawing a picture. I wish I still had it, Ward. I could have brought it up here and we could have done it as a graphic, awesome. Having Plano beating Mojo and being so happy about that. But now I hope they tie, Ward. I hope we get a nice 0-0 triple overtime tie. No winner on this game. I don't know why we're playing it, Ward. I mean, can you think of any good reason why, other than the nostalgia that these two teams
the
match as far as getting ready for
that's
district?
The only reason I can think of right there is what you said. It's old school rivalry and try to bring it back, kind of like Cleburne did with Houston Heights a little bit for that 2-year period. Hey, let's talk about our first.
But did anybody show up to those games? I mean, do you care?
No, I don't even think they did.
I don't even think this game is going to get the Plano fans out either way on either road trip. I think Odessa Permian is your favorite in this game. Oh, Plano's got some work to do. Now, and we'll probably talk about that next week because Plano versus Richardson is like an old school rivalry as well. I guess their coach decided we're going back to the '80s. We're going to pretend like it's the 1980s. We're going to schedule Winston Duke and the Richardson Eagles, and we're going to schedule Odessa Permian and Mojo, and we're going to pretend we're going to be like we were in 1988. And I think Plano's probably 3-7, and it ain't 1988 anymore, Ward.
No, it's not. It's not because in 1988. North Crowley and Lancaster was not a huge game, but it is here, and it's also what we like to call a Diggs and Wizzy special because we'll both be at that game together because it's indoors for me and because you like good football for you. But talk about this game and what you think is going to happen. I mean, it's Lancaster knows what they're getting into in 11-6A, so they got to. I mean, their record may not look pretty at the end of the season at all. I mean, they have a very good chance of having maybe a 4-6 type record, but I commend Leon Paul for scheduling what they're going to see in district play, and he did it in scrimmages over the past couple of years. But he's got North Crowley. He's heading out to Aledo in week 2. Talk to me about this game and you always talk about the Tigers line and how they may not be able to hold up because they have the athletes, but boy, their line's going to have to hold up against some of these dudes from North Crowley. That's for sure.
Yeah, and North Crowley, has a really good offensive line. They got Henry Fasuzi and a couple of transfers on that offensive line. So North Crowley is pretty strong in every position. And then from some of the scrimmage reports, the transfer from Abilene, Cooper, I think it is one of those West Texas schools out there, is looking really good. I think his name is Daniel Bray. If popped in my head is Daniel Bray. So if it's not Daniel Bray, it's the running back transfer from Abilene.
Yeah,
try to be specific and you'll always be right. But North Crowley again looked really impressive in that scrimmage against Allen from what people say. Lancaster looked really impressive in their scrimmage against North Forney. So you look at those two teams and you got the athletes. I think the biggest difference in this game is going to be that North Crowley has that infrastructure on the offensive and the defensive side, defensive line. Lancaster's got the defensive line. They got 3 or 4 players coming back on the defensive line, but the offensive line has a lot of questions. I think this is going to be an ugly game, Ward. If you remember Cedar Hill and Rockwall the couple of years, it was just real ugly football for whatever reason on Saturday afternoon at the Star. I don't know what about
Yeah.
Saturday afternoons at the Star make for some bad football. But I think North Crowley is going to win a slugfest. I think it's going to be closer than some people think. I don't think North Crowley is just going to completely destroy Lancaster. I think we're going to see a lot of turnovers, a lot of penalties. I think we're going to have some, second and 25s and second and 20s, second and 30s, which are going to derail some drives. But I think North Crowley wins like a 28-20 kind of a game. A comfortable win. Maybe North Crowley scores a touchdown late to make it 28-20. I think North Crowley is a solid favorite in this game, but I don't think we're going to be looking at the score at the end going, whoa, North Crowley caught our eyes. And I don't think we're going to look at the score and go, uh-oh, got to be worried about Lancaster. I think Lancaster's going to hold their own against North Crowley, but North Crowley is clearly the favorite in my eyes.
And that name, Daniel Brave, was correct. My man Diggs can remember things. Yeah, that Rockwell.
I'm bad at names, Ward. I'll tell you, I am bad at names. My memory. I know you. I know you got a person that you know over there in Houston who talks about Houston. He can tell you names from 2013. He'll tell you the starting lineup from Everman's offensive, top 5 in 2013. Not that guy. I'm not the name guy, but I do have big ideas. I'm the big idea guy. And big idea why this is the Diggs and Wizzy special. It's going to be a great game, and I'm going to be looking for a little bit of style points, but it's really a good chance to look at Coach Ray Gates and what he's done in the offseason, and has North Crowley gotten any closer? Because last time North Crowley was in the Star, they beat Prosper pretty well. It was kind of their crowning achievement. But then the next week, Allen, pushed them a little harder than I thought they should, and then Duncanville completely obliterated them. So North Crowley left last season with a bad taste in their mouth. So we're going to find out what they can do, if they can gargle with a little bit of mouthwash and spit out a little bit of Lancaster Tiger juice out. Just get it out of the system before they play DeSoto next week, where I think they will be an underdog against those Fighting Eagles.
Yeah, it should be a decent crowd there too. Where if for high school football fans, considering that's the only game going on really at that time of day, and it's indoors. Boy, it's like what else can you ask for? Let's also talk about Mansfield against Mesquite Horn. We know Mesquite Horn got hit with the transfer portal. They couldn't say much because they kind of used the transfer portal the year before to get themselves pretty good. Talk to them against Mansfield, because if you remember last year, we didn't really talk much about Mansfield until they took it to Summit, and then all of a sudden we're like, okay, this Mansfield Cedar Hill game is going to be for this last playoff spot. Is Mansfield in it? And now that they're in with North Crowley and them, I think you have them easily in the playoffs. Maybe not easily, but in the playoffs. Right. What kind of team can they be by taking on Mesquite Horn, who's probably going to be one of the last 2 or 3 teams in 11-6A this year?
But they won the last 2 or 3 teams in 11-6A, as Mansfield can personally attest to you. You can still be a pretty good team. Yeah. And I've heard some mixed rumblings out of Mesquite Horn that maybe a couple of those players that went away came back because they couldn't get DECs cleared out with. And I've heard some rumblings that in their scrimmage they looked a little bit better than people thought they would. There's so many questions about Mesquite Horn. Mesquite Horn 2 or 3 years ago, Ward, we kind of thought that they were going to be the team that looked prepared to be that next team to take a step, not necessarily in the Byron Nelson category, but starting on that pathway as a team that could take that a couple of steps each and every year. But then we talked about realignment happened and the transfer portal happened, and Mansfield is looking at their new district and looking like, oh, we have a really good chance. I've got them 3rd in that district. So this game is fascinating for me because it's kind of that 11-6A old versus 11-6A new. What's going to be kind of the relative strength of these districts in 3-6A and 11-6A? I think Mesquite Horn could be sneaky competitive in this game. I've got Mansfield in a win, but this is one of the games I'm going to be refreshing on Friday night to kind of find out what's happening, because it's one of those games that's not going to be the game of the week. You're not going to have a camera crew at it, but it's going to tell us so much about both of these teams. So I'm very fascinated to see how this game turns out and to kind of read the box score and how it happened, because a win's not always a win, Ward. I know people disagree with me on that, but if Mesquite Horn wins this game by 7 and Mansfield had 5 turnovers, or if Mansfield wins this game by only 7 but Mesquite Horn had 5 turnovers, maybe Mesquite Horn might have a little bit more. Now, when I say Mesquite Horn might have a little bit more, more, I don't think they're making the playoffs in 11-6A. They're not quite that high, but maybe they're not going to be as. Maybe we're going to take the shovel, Ward, and maybe we're going to put it to the side a little bit for Mesquite Horn. This is their chance to get rid of that shovel and maybe get some Diggs flowers.
They'd like to see some Diggs flowers. Everybody wants to see some Diggs flowers. In fact, I want to see some Diggs flowers right now.
Oh, right there we go.
That's beautiful.
They have a chance, Ward.
Throw some flowers on them. They do have a chance. Hey, let's move on to another interesting game with Saginaw Boswell against Denton Braswell. Boy, that's going to be tough for you to say. I know you're going to mix these teams up in your analysis here.
Boswell and Braswell.
Tell me what you think about
what was
this
our
one.
Frisco ISD correspondent's name, Ward?
Come on, man. Don't set me up like that. It's not
Jackson Verowick.
Verowick.
Come on, Ward.
I keep wanting to call him
Jackson Verowick, our guy.
The guy
from Frisco ISD.
You ain't supposed to remember names the way you told it to me just 10 seconds ago, but you remember that one. All right, talk to me about this game.
This is one of those games that, again, kind of like the Mansfield versus Mesquite Horn game. Yeah, I know you talked about it. You were the one who actually alerted me to it, Ward, when we were doing the campfire for 3-6A. 2 months ago, that Boswell really lost a lot to Eagle Mountain, and some players that we thought we might see at Boswell, we can now go to Eagle Mountain and see those schools. So where is Boswell? I think Boswell would have been a big favorite in this game if they kept everybody and if it was kind of the Boswell team of old. But Boswell losing all the players that they lost. Now we got Braswell over there. Braswell's trying to rebuild their program. We got Coach Laster over there. They've got some athletes. They've got that really good running back over there. I actually like Braswell in this game, even though the computer polls and some of the pundits might say Boswell is a favorite technically. I'm not putting this on upset watch because I don't think it would be an upset. I think Braswell is the favorite. But again, I want to see how Boswell is able to compete because like we talked about, Ward, almost everybody in 3-6A is eligible for that last playoff spot. So can Boswell be a contender for that last playoff spot, or are they kind of going more to the back of the line? I think this game is going to give us our first insight into that. And because I'm a nerd, Ward, that's the kind of stuff I love to know. I want to know. We know who number 1's going to be in 3-6A. I want to know who's number 4 is going to be. So I got to do my research to figure that out. And this game is going to help me. Now, Braswell is for some people maybe a potential team to sneak into that 4th playoff spot in 5-6A. They would have to beat Marcus or Louisville, and I don't think they'll be a favorite to do that. But if Braswell comes out and maybe beats Boswell 42-7, we might be talking a little bit more about Braswell potentially landing into that 4th playoff spot. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
That happened last year in this district with Flower Mound when they beat Lake Highlands. All of a sudden, we were talking about them as a team that may sneak in there at, right around.
And Plano East took care of that.
right around week 7 and 8, we stopped talking about that immediately. But we did talk about it after week 2, so silence yourself. Anyway, how about Keller versus a team that's right down the block from me, Flower Mound Marcus? We already know Garrett Nussmeier is going to be like a unsung quarterback at LSU. People aren't really talking about him, but he may have a surprising year. Well, his brother Colton is supposed to be able to turn things around here at Marcus. He's got an arm on him. He's one of the top recruited players for the class of 2027, and they're taking on the Keller team that's always consistent. And in our campfires 1 through 9 pickings, you were talking about, man, I hope they may be able to squeeze in there at 4, but they got to work about Timber Creek and all these other teams. This would be an interesting matchup.
These are 2 teams who I think have legitimate chances to fight for 4, potentially 3 if things go their way. We know Keller and Trinity have had some banger games over the last couple of years, so certainly Keller at their best could beat Trinity at their worst, but I'm not going to predict it with this version of Trinity and kind of what I'm expecting of them. And Marcus has that same kind of feedback. I know some people think that they can get as high as 3 and potentially beat a Louisville team, but I have them at number 4. And one thing I want to kind of go on a little bit of a rant about, because I actually didn't know this, Ward, and maybe other people didn't know this, but the Nussmeier family, their dad is actually the quarterback coach at Philadelphia. So if you want to talk about a story one day, you can fly up to Philadelphia and talk to Daddy Nussmeier. He was the quarterback coach here, but then he ended up at like LA, and then now he's over in Philadelphia. So that kind of makes me a little bit worried if I'm a Marcus fan, because that seems like a real easy move at some point. Like if he's up there in Philadelphia and there's a Philadelphia Pennsylvania powerhouse, or Cherry Hill or one of those teams up there in the Northeast might need a good quarterback. Maybe he might be a good fit for that. But he's kept his kids down here in Marcus, even though he's moved. I guess he's doing the commuting. So something to keep an eye on. I didn't know that, that Nussmeier tradition came from Daddy as far as that goes. And probably Mom's contributing to that as well. It's always the mom, Ward. The mom
Yeah,
is
it's
what
got to be
makes
the mom.
that magic. When they got that athlete up there, that's why my kids are, doing so good in cross country and cheerleading, because it ain't me. It's Mama Diggs when it comes to that. So you got two teams here who have legitimate chances for fourth place. You got 5-6A fourth place potentially, and 4-6A fourth place. What's going to give, and who's going to kind of give us a little bit of a nod that they might be a little bit more of a favorite for that, because each of those two districts have a quagmire in the middle. We talked about Braswell being that team, and with Keller, you got Timber Creek, you got Justin Northwest, LD Bell, Northwest Eaton, Hazlitt Eaton, whatever you want to call them. They even had a really good scrimmage against McKinney North this past week. So this game is one of those games that not only do I want to read about, I want to learn about. I might try to find some huddle footage on this because I think it will give us insight into 4-6A and 5-6A. It's like 2 for 1, Ward, and I love my discounts. So if I can get 2 for 1, I'm doing it. That's why I got twins, Ward. That's why you got twins.
That's right. We ain't paying for 2 hospital visits. Get them all out at once. Be done with it.
Get all at once.
Hey, you brought up Northeast Eaton, so let's talk about them. They're taking on Denton Ryan in the first game, and this is in their first game, and this is a classic game where Coach Hennigan has been desperate for some Diggs flowers over the past couple of years because you've been throwing shovels on them left and right. But maybe this is a chance to get style points and avoid getting beat by Eaton. I know Eaton's the 6A team here, but still, you got the way people talk about Ryan this year and the way we've talked about him. I feel like they got to win this.
Yeah, and Ryan, if you remember the last couple of years, they've been playing in the first week, and they've had some struggles. And I remember New Braunfels beat them like 34-33 a couple of years ago at Mary Hardin. So, Denton Ryan early in the season is gettable. And Northwest Eaton, they've had a couple of years where they had some really good talent in, Noah Lugo and Mason Stubby and their quarterback over there, who you always criticize for throwing too many interceptions. Ward's got the shovels out there. What's that?
That was him. You talked about him already, Noah Luga, but yeah, he was the one that threw some picks here and there.
All of them, over there. So Northwest Eaton's kind of had a little bit of a reset, but Northwest ISD has kind of like Prosper ISD has generated really good football. It's not like you're going to have a bad team over there anytime soon with Byron Nelson and Justin Northwest Eaton. So this is a game where Denton Ryan, if they are the Denton Ryan that we think they are, and Northwest Eaton is a team that is going to struggle to even win a couple of games, Denton Ryan should win this game 45-7. But I don't think they are. So I'm going to be fascinated to find out how this game works out, because Northwest Eaton showed me against, I saw some of the highlights against McKinney North. They lost that scrimmage 33-30. It was more of a timed half or something. But they showed their offense was able to put up points against McKinney North. So if their offense can put up points against Denton Ryan, we may see like a 69-49 sort of a game where all of a sudden we're a little bit worried about Denton Ryan on the defensive side of the ball, because Denton Ryan, Coach Hennigan, takes pride in that defense. So again, style points and a game to watch out with, because I think we need to find out the destinies of both teams. It may come out next week that Denton Ryan took care of business, and we may not talk about Northwest Eaton again on this show. We may get the shovel out and say they're done. But Denton Ryan is the team that we're going to keep an eye on. So can Northwest Eaton avoid the shovel, Ward? We're going to find out.
That's big. That's big. They got to avoid the shovel, man. Everybody wants some pretty flowers. Let's go to a game that actually I'm going to be at for the second half. Is Capel against Saxe. Capel's got Eddie Griffin going to Baylor. Saxe's got Khalid Lockett going to Texas. There's star power in this game. And it could show if getting ranked in Diggs' preseason ranking is worth it for the 9-6A teams, because even if they don't win, but if they give you a good showing there, that maybe they'll stick around in that top 25 of yours.
Yeah, Coppell has been a team. We talked about teams that have had slow starts, kind of like Denton Ryan. It's Coppell in the past has had a couple of slow starts. I remember the last 2 years against Keller Timber Creek. I wanted the style points in that game, and Coppell did not give it to me. I think Coppell showed me in their playoff run last year that they're past that point. I think they're going to come out and be a little bit more dominant. I don't think it's going to reflect anything on Saxe. I think Coppell just has way more depth than Saxe at a lot of the key positions. Saxe trying to have a quarterback getting started, and yeah, you got the best player on the field in Saxe. You've got that really good defensive line, but Coppell is a really good offensive line. So are they going to be able to penetrate past that really good offensive line? And then you got Eddie Griffin that you talked about, able to make plays. I think the linebackers and the secondary for Saxe are a little bit suspect. So I think Coppell should be able to score at will. But the question is, can Coppell defensively shut down Saxe? I think that's what's going to determine the point margin in this game. I think Coppell is going to score what they want to score, but can Saxe keep up with them score for score? I think maybe to a little bit of an extent they can, but I think Coppell should win this game 49-28. I think Coppell is going to put up a big number on Saxe, but I don't think that's going to have me any sort of downgrade on Saxe. I think Coppell is just that good. And Coppell with their non-district schedule, they're going to show that again when they play Waxahachie in a couple of weeks.
That is true. That is true. And I think that's down there in Wax. Let's move on to our next game, which is our game of the week, Denton Guyer versus Aledo. Boy, it seems like Aledo plays at Collins Complex a lot. I know a lot of it has to do with playing Ryan in their district, but I think they've played Guyer up there before too. They're used to that stadium. They're used to those small sidelines where photographers can't really seem to get up and down on a field there, which is why I usually send somebody else to Collins because I have trouble moving my big body around all these bigger bodies. But talk to me about this one because we get Guyer bringing in Kevin Sperry to show what he's got at quarterback, and then Aledo is, trying to show everybody who we have at quarterback.
Yeah, Denton Guyer, we didn't get a lot out of their scrimmage. I saw some of their highlights against Plano, and they just destroyed Plano in the scrimmage, as you would expect a good Denton Guyer to take care of business. And that sophomore, I believe his name is Zephyr Crew, get a bobblehead pre-made for him. He looks like in a couple of years he's going to be that kind of a player, and he was already coming up there just shredding Plano's second team out there. So you got Kevin Sperry, who's going to take over for as a senior and be the starter for Denton Guyer. But when Denton Guyer is pulling off the brakes on your Flower Mound Jaguars or something, the sophomore they're going to have come in there, he's still going to light it up on your Jaguars. Sorry, Ward, it's just going to be the way it's going to be for a couple of years with Denton Guyer and with the Flower Mound Jaguars. And Little Elm and some of the other teams in that district that might be struggling to be competitive. But I like Denton Guyer in this game, I think, especially in week one. We talked about it last week. I went on one of my Diggs rants and I talked about Aledo and them needing to prove something to me. This is that first chance because now Aledo is going to look across the field. It's going to be the first game in a while that they are not better than the team across the field. So can Aledo beat a team that they're not better than when they look at it across the field? Because Coach Buck and Coach Wood made a living out of doing that. I remember like 6 or 7 years ago, I went to a Denton Guyer Aledo game at Aledo. It was like a Thursday night starter, and it was like 59-49. And it was one of those games, and I actually came away more impressed at Aledo than I did Denton Guyer, despite the fact that Denton Guyer, lit up the scoreboard and played well in that game. So, what version of Aledo are we going to get? I'm incredibly fascinated at that. Denton Guyer, I think, is going to be the favorite. And what I want to see in this game is I think if Kevin Sperry can provide that senior leadership, Denton Guyer's young kids are going to be able to play that reckless abandon and be able to make a mistake or two. They're not going to have to be perfect. I think Aledo is going to have to play a perfect game and maybe get a couple of turnovers, which as we keep talking about, Ward, I know people in Aledo hate that I keep harping on this. 3 turnovers a game last year in that playoff run. That's not going to work. They got to play a perfect game to beat Denton Guyer, which they can. Aledo, at their theoretical best, should be able to win this game. I'm not saying it's impossible. We just haven't seen Aledo at their theoretical best with this administration. So I'm going to take Denton Guyer.
All right, it should be a good one, though. I like this one. I'm interested to see what's going on here. I'll probably end up taking.
So our game of the week, are we going to have like tailgating and all that out there for us?
We'll have everything. It's going to be special. You won't be there, but they'll have tailgating for me or Pox or whoever ends up showing up at that game. It's going to be special. It'll be a one.
It'll be a Plano Eastern Ward City. I mean, come on.
You're going to get nothing there. You'll get something from Buc-ee's and just sit in the stands and watch the game. let's move on. Excuse me. Let's move on to Richardson Pierce and Wiley. Talk to me about, Richardson Pierce is kind of running for that one of those spots there. It's open, one of the spots that possibly that Highland Park left behind. And then, of course, we've already said Wiley, the two Wiley teams in Sac City, probably the cream of the crops in 9-6A. What do you feel about this game?
Wiley's got a lot of 3-year starters, so they've got a little bit of senior experience coming back. They've got their quarterback, Jagger Bale, coming back. Richardson Pierce has got their quarterback coming back. And what I'm hoping to see is the return of Andrew Casagrande, the star running back. He was phenomenal for 4 games last year until he got hurt. So assuming everything is good there, I think they have a really good chance to make a statement against Wiley. Wiley has struggled in some of these non-district games. I think a lot of people would look at Wiley being a playoff team the last couple of years, Richardson Pierce being on the outside just looking in. And Richardson Pierce, I think people forget about how competitive they were in a lot of those games last year. Losing to Jesuit on the late in the game, losing to Berkner late in the game. So I think Richardson Pierce is, for me, actually a favorite in this game. I think we're going to actually see a higher quality of football in this game because of all of the senior returning players than some of the other games where you're trying to get some players who are just getting their first varsity action. So Richardson, Pierce, and Wiley is going to be one of those sneaky quality games. It's going to be a fun game, but I'm taking the Mustangs of J.J. Pierce to take care of business at the pirate ship.
Excellent. All right, well, let's move on to a game that I was planning on going to, but it didn't work out for me because they ended up playing in a neutral site. I was hoping to be at Prosper. But Prosper taking on Austin Westlake. Boy, that's some powers right there. The last time they won state, Austin Westlake had Coach Dodge there, but now he's moved on to Lovejoy after a couple years of retirement. Prosper, it's got the O-line everybody dreams of. Will they be able to hold back the Shaps?
Yeah, I mean, this is a fun game for Austin Westlake and Prosper to really get an understanding of who you are and what your playoff route is going to look like. Prosper has not always played the best non-district. The last couple of years, I remember them playing Euless Trinity, and it was always competitive games, but it kind of made us scratch our heads about Prosper. Like, Prosper, you really need to be getting them style points against Euless Trinity, and they weren't getting those style points against Euless Trinity. So we're going to find out how they're going to do against a blue blood down in the Central Texas area against Austin Westlake. I think Austin Westlake is going to be considered a favorite, but because they are so deep at all of their skill positions, their defensive line has always been great. Westlake is always going to have a good quarterback coming into it. And Prosper's big questions, it's not their offensive line. It's going to be their skill players. Who's going to step up behind those big those big holes that the 6 D1 offensive linemen are able to open for them. But Austin Westlake is going to have a well-coached team who's going to be a little bit ahead of other teams in week 1. This one thing I noticed about your Duncanvilles and DeSotos and Westlakes and Atascocitas and some of these teams, they play really well in week 1, whereas other teams have to kind of work into it. Prosper, I think, has been one of those teams that has to kind of work into it. Westlake is going to be ready on week 1. I'm going to give them a little bit of the advantage. I think they should be a 10 to 14 point favorite in this game.
Give them the old nod. I got you. All right, let's move on to McKinney against Frisco Emerson, which it's another game that we can call a Diggs and Wizzy special. That game's at the Star. And we're going to be talking about that game because they've lost a lot of players. They lost some players to transfer to graduation, all that stuff. And they lost a coach. And then you have Frisco Emerson, who's just on the doorstep there until they ran into a tough South Oak Cliff team. And now they don't have their all-do-everything quarterback, but they do have his brother in the defensive backfield. Talk about this game and what you hope the two of us see at that on Thursday night.
Yeah, I called an audible because we've been talking about this. You know your schedule. You know your week 1 schedule in like April. Like you wait for Pigskin Prep to start publishing their schedules, and you're just looking and like, okay, I'm gonna plan out everything. I don't even know who's playing next week, Ward. I don't know where I'm going other than Plano East and North Forney next week. So I don't, you probably know where you're going in October and November already. You got the country roads planned out and everything. But I actually had planned on going to Rockwall Heath and Highland Park until I saw Highland Park dominate Plano East in the scrimmage. And I don't think that game is going to be nearly as competitive. So this game, I feel like, is more instructive. I like to learn with my eyes in this way. So I think we're going to learn about where McKinney is going to fit in the 6-6A battle and where Frisco Emerson is going to fit in the 4-5A Division II battle. McKinney North playing down a little bit, two divisions, is a little bit weird, but I think that it's a good matchup because I actually think Frisco Emerson is the favorite in this game. Last year when they played Longview, I accurately called that McKinney. I was one of the few that picked McKinney over Longview. But I think now that we've seen all the transfers out, McKinney does still have some players, but I think Frisco Emerson has a little bit more depth. And one thing I'm always confused about, Wizzy, and we can talk about it on the podcast, is when I'm driving through McKinney and Frisco Emerson. Frisco Emerson is closer to McKinney ISD Stadium than McKinney is. It's like right across. You can if you get a little bit of elevation, you can actually see Frisco ISD, and it really confuses me because Frisco Emerson is completely in Craig Ranch. It's completely in McKinney city limits, but we're going to call them Frisco Emerson. So I like this as a potential rivalry because these kids have been growing up with each other. Even though you think of yourselves as 6A and 5A Division II, you don't realize that these kids have been growing up and playing each other in youth sports and things like that. So there's going to be a little bit of a rivalry because these kids know each other, and you have so many unanswered questions. We talked about McKinney. Coach Leonard, what's he going to be able to do? What's he going to bring to the program? Can Frisco Emerson take last year's success, giving Sauk everything they wanted in the state semifinals, and build upon that? Because of that, I got to go see this. I got to go figure out what are the answers to all these questions. The only thing I feel a little bit confident about is that Frisco Emerson should be considered the favorite, but there's so many things that could happen in this game because Frisco Emerson has a couple of key questions at quarterback. Maybe we find out that Frisco Emerson is really barren at the quarterback position, and maybe a team like Prosper Walnut Grove could sneak up on him for that fourth playoff spot. Or maybe we come away in this game looking at Frisco Emerson like, boy, that district is even more loaded than we thought. So to me, I think you were right all along, Wizzy. This is the game to watch on Thursday night at the Star, which is nowhere near either of those two schools.
Exactly.
But we'll play it there anyway.
Yeah,
we got to have air conditioning, Wizzy.
Those Frisco ISD teams are sprinkled all over the place. I think maybe only 6 or 7 of them are actually in Frisco, but it will be interesting. I'm interested to see Riley Pettijohn on defense, a true volume tackler. He'll get to the ball, just hold the ball carry up for a little bit, and he'll put a pop on them. Moving on, teams that are always ready in week one. I think Lake Travis is always ready. It's Arlington Martin. Actually, they went down there when Wager was coaching and beat them in a low-scoring game, I believe. I can't remember what the final was, but they came up here, and then Martin beat them up here at Choctaw Stadium. So Martin's had their number, but talk to me about Lake Travis, Martin, what you think might happen this game.
Yeah, because you said that, it does seem like that there's something about, we talked about teams that are slow starters. Lake Travis seems to have been a little bit of a slow starter recently, and Arlington Martin has had, because Arlington Martin, even with the new coach, has always had those couple of special team wrinkles and just things that they can find a way. Their defense has always been good. They've always been well coached, so they can keep that game low. I actually think, even though I'm a little bit higher, I think we're going to get a little bit better out of Arlington Martin. I think Lake Travis, because of those missteps of the last couple of years and kind of how this game has been a traditional rivalry, is going to be more up for Arlington Martin than Arlington Martin is going to be for Lake Travis. So I actually think, even though it's not going to impact my rankings per se, I think Lake Travis is going to blow Arlington Martin out of the water and get out a little bit of catharsis, Ward. You know how you like to shake my neck when we're at some of these games. You're like, Diggs, I'm tired of getting complaints about you. You're being mean and disrespectful at the mouth about teams. And you do that to me, Ward. I think Lake Travis is going to metaphorically do that to Arlington Martin and get a nice 28-7 kind of a win to where they can breathe and go, taking care of Arlington Martin finally. Let's move down Bee Caves Road down there in Austin and take care of business and be the Lake Travis that we can be for the rest of the year and get past this Arlington Martin problem. think we're going to see it, Ward.
It has
And
been
I love
fun.
DFW teams. I don't like picking against DFW teams, but Lake Travis, I've done it twice now. Maybe the Central Texas
Yeah.
podcast is going to get started because we got Austin Westlake and
Yeah,
Lake Travis, the tag team champions of the world, defeating Prosper and Arlington Martin. What's wrong with me, Ward?
Yeah, I don't know.
We're going to have another tag team battle we're going to be talking about with out-of-state teams coming up in 4-5A Division 2. So
that's right. You'll probably pick the out-of-state team too. Well, you're making enemies, Diggs, but you don't mind that. You love making enemies.
I don't mind.
What kind of enemies are you going to make out of this game? Wiley East and McKinney North, as we dip into 9-6A against 5-5A Division 1. McKinney North's going to they edged their way into the Frisco district, and they're probably going to compete for a playoff spot in that one as well. I mean, you've already got them in there in the preseason. Wiley East is one of those top 3 teams in 9-6A. This should be interesting to see how Michael Henderson can handle himself against McKinney North in the 5A team.
Really is. And if you remember the last couple of years, Ward, McKinney North has played 6A, the small 6A teams pretty well. McKinney North was just, right under that cutoff line. So they've got the 6A numbers, and they've got some players this year who are really getting on the radar and playing some impressive football. Because of what I've seen in my offseason evaluation and 7-on-7 evaluation, actually bumped up McKinney North over Frisco Reedy to be my number 2 team in that district, just below Frisco Lone Star. We'll be talking about Frisco Lone Star here in a little bit. Wiley East is a team that they've been kind of a slow starter. So you got McKinney North, who seems to be offensive powerhouse right out of the gate against a Wiley East team that they got to work into their season a little bit. This is a game I could have put on upset watch, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about it because of all the different layers of this game. I think Wiley East is a favorite in this game, but it would not surprise me at all to see McKinney North win this game. But it wouldn't really, if McKinney North was able to upset Wiley East, it wouldn't keep me from being as bullish as I am on Wiley East in that 9-6A, just because of the relative competition. So Wiley East, this is kind of a game where it's all of it. I want to see style points, upset watch, and how can McKinney North compete? I think McKinney North offensively is going to show that they're a bit better, but I think they've also shown defensively a lot of problems. McKinney North has always been one of those McKinney ISD teams who they got to win shootouts. They're winning these 60 to 50 games at times, and I think we're going to see a lot of points scored in this game. I think Wiley East is going to score a few more than McKinney North, but I think we're going to see in the 30s or 40s in this game. And Wiley East has not always been a team that can easily get to the 30s and 40s. Even in the Garland ISD games, they've struggled having these big offensive performances. So there's a few worry points I have about Wiley East and McKinney North, but I think Wiley East has a little bit more talent, and we talk about the 3-year starters that Wiley East has, whereas I think McKinney North has a little bit more questions and some depth issues that I think Wiley East has the answer for. But really another one of those games that I'm going to be nerding out, reading the box score and getting all the highlights I can, because this is going to tell us a lot about 5-5A Division 1 and 9-6A Division 2 at the top. Is Wiley East closer to Saxe, or maybe they're closer to Wiley? We'll find out.
Can they get up on that tier 1? That's what you want to know. If you can keep them
on
tier 2. But what do you want to know from this game? We got Fossil Ridge who dropped down to 5A, and they're taking on the Colony, who you always are talking about how the Colony is Louisville ISD's little stepbrother, but they are a Louisville ISD team, and they did play some very quality games. They got their quarterback back, but Fossil Ridge is dropping down from 6A. This could be one that you're nerding out on the box score as well.
Everybody's dropping in this thing. You got Frisco going from 6A to 5A Division 1. You had the Colony going from 5A Division 1 to 5A Division 2. What's happening over there in the Colony? Why is it getting smaller over there? Every time I go over there, they got 20 new businesses. What's going on in the Colony?
Smaller. I know one thing. The Colony's got that Crazy King burrito place that I've been over there about 2-3 times. It fills me up real nice, so I don't know why they're dropping out. I just go there
got Nebraska Furniture Mart and Grandscape, and they got that new stadium, that kind of sphere knockoff that is over there in the Colony. It's growing, but yet they keep getting smaller. Maybe they'll get to 4A Division 1 and really have a chance to shine. But that's exactly why I've got so many questions about this game, because you got two teams. You got the black and gold against the black and gold. You got our graphic in black and gold. You do that for me because of plain we. So it's all the black and gold in this game. The Colony on paper should be a favorite in this game, but Fossil Ridge has so many questions because they graduated so much. But Keller ISD has been so good historically at reloading. You talked about how Coach Pride talked about how he wants to get his program to a point where you just look at Byron Nelson and they're going to lose some players every year, but they've got the program. In the last 10 years, Fossil Ridge has been a team that you could look at as a program, kind of a program, a bit redundant, but I think it makes sense, as a team that can develop some of their younger talent and get better. Whereas the Colony right now has a special group of kids, but they don't quite have the depth that you expect from Fossil Ridge to historically have. So I've got the Colony in this game, but this is one of those games that it would not surprise me to see Fossil Ridge show out and ball out in this game and maybe make a point for why they should be the fourth place team in that district. The Colony is looking to potentially be the fourth place team in their district. So we got two teams that are just on the outside looking in their respective districts, but they have a chance to prove that maybe they belong. So we're looking at style points and learning about both teams in this game. So many things to learn about these teams as we're going to learn next week. We'll be better, just like the teams get better each week. We'll be better as we learn more about the teams. But this is a game where I want to learn about Fossil Ridge and see if the Colony can continue that momentum after dropping from 5A Division I and having beaten Denton Ryan last year. Can they continue to show that success this year? They got to beat Fossil Ridge to do that.
We all like to learn. That's what everything's about, man. High school's for learning and watching football. So we're going to learn. We're doing both with this game. What are we going to do from this game, though? With Arlington Heights taking on Everman, it's kind of a tale of two districts, right? Arlington Heights is in a district that may not be as competitive as you might think, where Everman's in that monster district where they may have been a perennial playoff team in the past, but now it's like, help. So they're going to get their wins where they can get them, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have a potentially, I think some people, I've seen people place Everman in that the district of depth, as we call it in 3-5A, anywhere between 6th and 8th in that district. And I've pretty much seen everybody pick Arlington Heights first. So you've got a first place team, and these two teams are, maybe 10 miles from each other over there in Fort Worth. So it's a game where Arlington Heights has a chance to prove that they're not just going to make the playoffs and just go there and be happy. They have a chance to show that they belong. And whereas Everman has a chance to show us that they're going to be a factor for that fourth place team in their district 3-5A. So I'm excited about this game. It's one of those nerdy sorts of games. I think Arlington Heights on paper is the favorite, but Everman traditionally should win this kind of a game. I mean, if you just scraped off all of the stats and the records and whatnot, I would say Everman is that team. So in a little bit of an upset, I'm taking your Everman Bulldogs to defeat the Arlington Heights Yellow Jackets. I believe they're the Jackets. And win a game, even though Arlington Heights is probably still going to go 9-1 or 8-2 and make the playoffs. But kind of an insight into that. Can Arlington Heights win a playoff game? If the answer to that is yes, they got to win this game.
They do got to win this one. They got to win it. I don't want to say big, but they got to win it. They got to take out Everman.
It's not going to be big. It's not going to be pretty, but they got to win this game. Just like Fort Worth Passville has to win this game against Irving MacArthur if they're going to show us.
I was going to talk to you about that because you've been talking about Passville this whole summer long. They're in 5A. They're rubbing their hands like, okay, it's time to get some wins and maybe get in the postseason. But now they're playing up into a 6A team. Irving MacArthur, is this a way to, hey, let's start things off by showing them we can beat an Irving school?
And I think that's exactly what they wanted to do. They want to test themselves against a bigger school that's going to struggle. Irving MacArthur has been the best Irving ISD football school for a while, but they haven't been good enough to beat any of the Richardson schools consistently enough to make the playoffs over this marriage between Richardson ISD and Irving ISD. But Irving MacArthur on paper should probably be a little bit more of a favorite against Pascal. But what I want to know is the excitement for Pascal having that district realignment where almost everybody thinks they're going to make the playoffs and they feel like they have a chance to maybe even beat an Arlington Heights and get to that number 1 seed. Can they start out by winning a game where maybe they would be considered an underdog in 6A? So again, a game I'm fascinated by. I'm going to take Pascal to upset Irving MacArthur in this game. I think they're going to start out strong, and I heard good things about their scrimmage. Pascal, that they are starting out strong, and maybe they might surprise us. Maybe getting to that number one seed over Arlington Heights, and maybe after if what I say happens, if Arlington Heights loses to Everman and Pascal beats Irving MacArthur, maybe you see Fort Worth Pascal make that number 15 spot in the
Don't
rankings.
know.
You don't know, but I might
some,
got some flowers for you.
It looks like some flower situation here. So let's move on to the next game, and this is Pat Doney's big game Friday night. He'll be again. It's at the Star, so I think that's why Pat Doney picked it. But Frisco Lone Star's taking on Argyle. We had Coach Rayburn on last week to talk to break down a little 5A action. I thought it was interesting that he said I asked him about how his scrimmage went last night because we taped on Saturday. He said, "Oh, it was in the morning. We did it at 7 a.m. to 9:30 during our athletics period." So I see how that works out for you, but what about the other team? Are they loading buses at 5 and coming out there? And I guess you're not looking to have a parent or two at the game, but he said they looked good, and then they went to see, or maybe it was Thursday morning, and they went to see Argyle scrimmage, or maybe they saw Argyle scrimmage. And either way, they know each other. They both know each other quite well. This should be a good one. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to see where he's going to be playing Davion Gross because he admitted he's going to be an athlete. He's going to be wherever I want to play him. Wherever I think I'm going to get the most points, that's where he's going to be. So it's going to be interesting. Tell me what you think about this game.
Yeah, this is one of those games that you might even be able to convince me back and forth. One thing that I don't necessarily like for Frisco Lone Star from a perception wise is that this is really a no-win situation for Frisco Lone Star. If they win this game, well, you beat a 5A Division II team. You're kind of supposed to do that. But if you lose, then you start to look bad. And it's really going to have nothing to do with their district. Argyle is one of our top teams. They're state ranked. I mean, Argyle's got all of the pedigrees. We've got all the flowers for both of these teams. But that makes it even more fascinating because you got McGuire Gasperson who grew up last year and they got a little bit of experience at quarterback. One of the biggest questions for Lone Star is going to be their quarterback. And I know Coach Rayburn has said on a couple of programs, Carice Hoyt is expected to step in at that role as sophomore quarterback. But sophomore quarterback, that's a little bit of a problem. And Argyle's got a good defense to take advantage of sophomore mistakes.
He's happy with that, and you were talking about a sophomore over there, Geyer, that you like a lot. So you don't count him out quite yet. He might be something special here in week one. You'll see something special.
But Coach Speak will always tell you every sophomore you start, it's one loss. It's just going to happen. You start a sophomore, you're getting one loss. It's weird to think that Argyle is a little bit of the more experienced team because we know Argyle was young last year, but they got a lot of players coming back. And Lone Star was very young at spots last year, but they had enough senior leadership to kind of hold that. And all the big players over at Lone Star right now are sophomores and juniors. So, it's like their established experience is still young. So who's going to step up for Lone Star? I think Lone Star, because of their defense, you got a kid like the Deck kid, Jordan Deck, who's an all-star back there in the backfield, the secondary backfield. I think Lone Star is just going to have a little bit more. I think this is going to be Lone Star seems to play these games in the 20s. When they played like Forney last year, the special teams errors and turnovers. I think we're going to have a lot of mistakes in this game, but I think Lone Star is going to win like a 24-21 sort of a game. Just an absolute slugfest, maybe even in the teens. I don't think it's going to be pretty to watch, so I think you're going to have to get your highlights when you can in this game. I don't think you're going to have a lot of big plays, but I do think Lone Star is going to take care of business. But in a close game, bro, I don't think we're going to impact either of these two teams in the rankings.
Gotcha. Another Frisco team's has taken on Grapevine. They played last year. That was an exciting game. We're trying to figure out what's going on with Wakeland. And then Grapevine is now out of the Fort Worth district. They're in one that's going to be a little bit more competitive, where I believe you don't even have them in the postseason at this point. What can any of these teams show you that'll make them feel like contenders for their district and get into the postseason? Or does one team have to blow out the other in order to really get you those style points you want to see?
I feel like this is where my memory gets me bad, but I feel like the last 2 years, the opposite of what I thought was going to happen in this game actually happened. Like, Wakeland is, they got their 3-year starter. Grapevine wins that game. All of a sudden, Grapevine's got everybody back. Wakeland wins that game. So this game has been a crazy game over the last couple of years with, a wide variety of results. And, really hasn't meant anything at the end of the day, but these two teams seem to, bring the best out of each other. So I think it's a good matchup, which is why they kind of kept it on. But this is one of those games where you've got Wakeland, depending on if you get our guy Jackson. Can you do it?
Verwick.
Verwick. There you go, Wizzy. There he is right there.
All right.
Give him a high five virtually.
If
our guy Jackson Verwick is correct, Frisco is going to step in. Wakeland's not going to make the playoffs. How do you replace Brennan Meyer? I don't think you can replace Brennan Meyer. So we're going to have to find out who's going to be able to try to do that. But Grapevine graduated just about everybody last year too, so it's basically going to be the JV games from the last couple of years when they played each other. They've all elevated themselves. This is a good game for me. The winner of this game, I think, I'm going to go ahead and say it right now, Wizzy. The loser of this game is done. Whoever loses this game is done for the year. It's a shovel game.
I got to get my shovel graphic ready for you.
Because if you can't win this game, you can't win. You can't win this year because of the districts you're in. It's a week 1 elimination game, Ward. Whoever loses it, they're done. I mean, how can you see the pathway of the loser of this game making the playoffs in their district?
It's difficult.
Tell me, Ward. Be devil's advocate.
Sometimes a beating like that gives you extra motivation to come back and say, you know what, we're not this bad. We're going to practice 8 hours instead of 2 after school. You're going to stay here till 1 a.m. We're going to get this thing righted the ship, and we're going to find a way to get ourselves up in that Fishkill district or Grapevines district. I don't know. I think you're almost
right. The district of death.
District of death. That's right. There.
Got Argyle, Colleyville Heritage, Mansfield Timberview, Mansfield Summit, Everman, Arlington Seguin.
And Heritage is playing some teams in the non-district. Man.
The Colony. It's crazy.
Right here, they're playing Red Oak. They're playing Red Oak this week. They're playing Richland the week after. Talk to me about this game, because this is another one that I'll be at for either the first or second half. Red Oak and all the receivers against Colleyville Heritage, and they got a receiver in their own right with Braden Blewett. Talk to me about this, because this is Heritage team who's wanted to knock Argyle out the playoffs last year, and they just kept putting up points, and they didn't have a really true great throwing quarterback. They had Lars Ulrich back there who liked to take off running. Talk to me about this game. Who you think's going to pull it out?
One thing I take pride in, Ward, is I like to be better than Dallas Morning News. That's why you pay me the big bucks and let me mention Plano East 7 to 10 times in a podcast, even when it has nothing to do with Red Oak and Colleyville Heritage. I can work that in there because I pride myself on having a little bit more insight. But the Dallas Morning News, who's got Greg Riddle and that crew, is very well versed in this, and they get all kinds of stuff from the coaches. They've got Red Oak as a higher ranked team than Colleyville Heritage. For me, this is a no-brainer that Colleyville Heritage should be a favorite. So you've got some widely divergent views on this game, and this is one of those beautiful games, kind of like Frisco Lone Star and Argyle, to where you just got two really good teams who have not traditionally played each other. So we have no insight into any sort of historical nature of this, and we're just going to get what you get. And any number of outcomes could happen, and maybe in 5 to 7 weeks we'll go, oh, that's what we saw there in that Red Oak and Colleyville Heritage game. But for me, I think Colleyville Heritage showed a little bit more in the 7-on-7 season. I read an article about Red Oak where they haven't even figured out their quarterback battle yet. And yeah, you got those wide receivers. You got some of the best wide receivers, but who is going to get them the ball? And we know who's going to get the. Bodie Weaver has played great. He's taken the team on. He's shown the leadership. You got Blewett that you talk about. And we talked about it last year, Wizzy, on the warm-up, because it was happening in real time, just about when Coach Edwards was taking over at Colleyville Heritage. What a defensive-minded, did you interview him last year, his third day on the job? Exactly. I mean, and he came from Killeen, where he is a defensive-minded coach. And now you've got Colleyville Heritage, who's going to bring back a lot on their defensive side of the ball. You've got a Red Oak with a questionable quarterback. I think that matchup, to me, speaks well to Colleyville Heritage, and I've got Colleyville Heritage winning this game, maybe winning this game going away. But a lot of people have not agreed on my assessment of Colleyville Heritage being a top team who could potentially win the region. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm about to be exposed for all the world to see on these video packages as the idiot. So we're going to find out, Ward. I'm putting my reputation on the line on this game. Give me Colleyville Heritage.
Oh, boy, I'd love you to be known as the idiot. That'd be awesome. And Red Oak took a major blow when Kamori and Morgan got poached over to South Oak Cliff. So that a hit on the defensive side of the ball, which we didn't even really mention that much.
He didn't get poached, Ward. He moved to crime-free Marcellus.
Okay, he moved there, and he's there.
That's right. For a better life.
For a better life for himself and everybody. Here's another game you're going to be at, and you said you wanted to go deep on this one. Melissa versus Parkview. Tell me you're going to pick the out-of-town team, and then we will start calling you an idiot. Go ahead and tell me what's going to happen.
An idiot on one hand. I like country music, Ward. We sing offhand. We sing the Judds, and we sing Reba McEntire and Colin Ray. There's all kinds of songs about Little Rock, and I'm a little past Little Rock, but I'm a long way from Over You. So I gotta figure out this Longview stuff, because it's hard enough when I define the Metroplex the way I define the Metroplex. I know you get mad, but then you went out and found a sponsor to make my world happy, and that now you're interviewing coaches from Sulphur Springs and Athens. You got Zach Harrell and all kinds of players. And now we got to talk about Little Rock Parkview. We got to go out of the state. We got to keep going up 30, well past your comfort level. And now we got to talk about it's real North Texas right there. And another game we're not even talking about, you got Kimball is playing like Pine Bluff, Arkansas next week. So we got all these Arkansas versus Texas schools. But in doing my research on Parkview is the Duncanville of Arkansas. I'm not saying they're as good as Duncanville, but they are clearly the big best team. Maybe I'm offensive right now. Maybe I should call them the DeSoto of Arkansas right now, since DeSoto did beat Duncanville. I apologize, DeSoto. You deserve that. Duncanville is the last 5 to 6 years of the Duncanville, but DeSoto is now in charge of things. And Parkview's got like 6 to 8 really good Power 5 D1 talent players when you look at them. And they've already played a game. So they've got the second game, and we always talk about the improvement from week 1 to week 2 is some of the best improvement. It's coach speak, but it's like the best improvement you'll see. Well, they've already played a game, and they've won 35-0. So they're coming in on their second game with all of this D1 talent. And Melissa's got a lot of players. They've got the Hoover, Alabama transplant, and they got a couple of even transfers I didn't know they had. They got a Plano West transfer, a D1 kid from Plano West. Plano West lost their best offensive lineman, which is good for Plano East. We can always make it about Plano East. That's why you see the gold and black there. One team's gain is Plano East's gain as well. So when I just look at the matchup and the talent that Parkview has, and the fact that they've got a game on Melissa, and the fact that I've never seen Melissa win a football game. Every time I go to a Melissa game, they lose. Think about it. I went to see South Oak Cliff last year. They lost. Saw Lovejoy last year. They lost. Melissa cannot win a game when I'm there. They're not going to start this year, which means my credentials going to probably be declined. So I'm going to have get Pat Doney on the phone with Melissa ISD to make sure we're good to go there. But I am taking Parkview over Melissa in a first week. I won't even call it an upset. I just think Parkview is better than Melissa and has a little bit more experience. So there you go.
Denied. Give him that denied.
And cannot take a DFW team over today. Over an out-of-area team. What's wrong with me?
You know why? Because you're an idiot. Maybe you're not an idiot, but I know one guy who thinks you're an idiot. It's my guy Alonzo from Anna. And now you're going to talk about Anna going up against Oakland, not California, but Tennessee. Tell me what you feel about this game. And what kind of research did you do on Oakland, Tennessee?
All my exes live in Texas. That's why I hang my head in Tennessee.
I got you.
I'm just going to be a country lyricist making our way. We're going to work Plano East and George Strait into every single episode. It's going to be a new bit. I got to look for new bits this year, Ward, because a little bit of insight that has nothing to do with Anna and Oakland. But I'm firing Toller this year. Toller is no longer going to be on the dump. The Snake Farm, we're done. We're gonna create a new bit. So you're gonna have to tune in Friday to find out what my new bit is going to be on the dump. That gives me a couple of days to actually figure out what my new bit is going to be on the dump. But Oakland, looking at Oakland, they've already played a game as well. So they won 35-0 in their first game. But they don't seem to have the D1 talent that Anna has. And they don't seem to have the D1 talent that Parkview has. So finally, Alonzo Tutson, who is the author of the Tutson Texoma Telegram, which is all things that are inaccurate, because Alonzo Tutson lost to me in a debate. He got the people have spoken, so he's delusional about that. Anna is not in Texoma. Texoma is not even real. And if it was real, Anna's not in it. Anna's a Collin County DFW school. But you know what's not real? Murfreesboro football is not going to be competitive with our 4A Division One defending champ. Give me those Coyotes, not the Coyotes. Give me those Coyotes
I'm with you.
to win our first out of area against area game. Finally, Anna will validate us.
We had to wait
if they lose, I'm firing them too. We're going to get the shovel out if Anna loses.
Oh, yeah. We definitely.
If Emerson wins and Anna loses, get a shovel ready.
Because
I'm doing it.
Dirt. You're digging dirt on them. Burying them.
Digging dirt.
Will they come back to life? Who knows? Here's what I would have loved to be the Country Roads until I saw that Godley's got that new stadium coming up, and I wanted to get a guy out there for Alvarado and Godley for that brand new stadium. But man, that's a nice battle right there. Midlothian Heritage against Stephenville. Stephenville's got all kinds of. I think they're in a 5-team district, right? I know they're 4A, but they're going to make a run for a state title. I think they got 15 games in them, at least maybe 16. And then there's Midlothian Heritage, who's the odds-on favorite in their district. Tell me about this game, because Midlothian Heritage goes right from here to Argyle next week.
Yeah, when I look at this, I think I'm on the outlier of this. I think you talked about how a lot of people are high on Stephenville, and in 4A Division One, Stephenville absolutely has an opportunity to make a good run, but especially now that Anna has left, and we'll find out. We might even see a Stephenville versus Panther Creek, kind of a state semifinal sort of a game. I've looked at Stephenville a little bit. They're not in a DFW area district this year, so we've kind of fired them. They were last year. They were in that district with China Spring, and you're always looking at these rankings with China Spring and Stephenville and like Waco La Vega. You're like, Diggs, what's going on? I'm like, well, we got to talk about Alvarado and Kennedale and our DFW area schools. But now that Stephenville is in their district, I haven't paid that much attention to them. But watching them last year, even if they return to everybody, I just don't see what people are as excited about with Stephenville, whereas Midlothian Heritage, I think, is probably they've got a lot coming back as well. I think Midlothian Heritage is a significant favorite in this game, and I'm looking at some of the people and analysts talking about this game, and everybody's talking about Stephenville being a favorite in this game. I don't see it. So maybe I'm going to learn something about Stephenville now that I've taken my shovel and kicked them out of DFW. Maybe I'll learn something. But I think Midlothian Heritage, from what I'm seeing, what they've got coming back, what Stephenville is coming back, and kind of the size disparity, I've got Midlothian Heritage as a 2-score favorite in this game.
Yeah, I got them winning. I don't know about 2 scores, but I definitely have them winning this game. So not only are you throwing a shovel and dirt on them, but you're also throwing a bus pass at them, kicking them out of DFW. You're doing everything to this team. A team that's on the move up, though, is Brock. They're in 4A now, and they're playing. They might as well start playing the best. If you're going to move up to 4A, there's no reason to tinker around with the 3A schools anymore. So they got Decatur right off the bat. It should be interesting. Tell me what you think.
Brings a lot of players back from last year. Their quarterback, a couple of running backs, a couple of really talented defensive players. So Brock was very young last year. They lost to Malakoff and was unable to make it back to that state finals where they've lost the last couple of years. So Brock has been a team that has gone 4 or 5 deep, and because of our relegation plan, we moved them up. Like you keep winning, you keep making it to the state semifinals and state finals. We're moving you up. So Brock has finally moved up. But what Brock did last year in their non-district is they played a lot of these 4A Division 1 and 4A Division 2 teams in non-district. So Brock is continuing that hard scheduling to make everything else a little bit easier for it. We'll call it the South Oak Cliff scheduling, where they're like, we'll play anybody. Just get us on the schedule. Even they played down, and that was like one of the most fascinating games last year, the Brock versus Gunter game, because they played up for so much. Then they played down and they lost to Gunter too. So, Brock was not scared of anybody. But again, because they're taking on these all-comers, they've got to be ready. Brock has been a turnover-prone team at times, just like Aledo. Something about that Parker County water system over there, Ward, just causes turnovers, and we don't like it. Decatur, being a 4A Division 1 team, being a highly ranked team, I think should be considered a favorite. Decatur. But Decatur's got a lot of questions. They lost their big all-everything running back. So who is going to step up when we talk about these program schools? Decatur has been a program school for the last 7 to 8 years. I think Brock's got more coming back, but I'm going to take Decatur in a 38-31 kind of a game. Brock will hold their own for sure, but I have Decatur as the favorite.
Interesting. That'll be a good one. And then To talk about a couple games that we don't have going in depth on. There's a nice game Thursday night down in Waco. Belleville taking on Salina, a game that probably will go 2 hours and 5 minutes, depending on how long the bands go, because that ball is not going in the air too terribly much unless when Salina does their annual, fake handoff and pass back the other way for a touchdown there in that one. But even that, they only do around the red zone anyway. So I like that game. I think that one's going to be interesting. Also this week, Sam Houston, they're trying to knock off that 0-26 game losing streak, and they have a shot because they're playing Irving Nimitz. This will be one of their big shots to do it before district play starts, where they may get one against Grand Prairie. They've changed the culture over there. I mean, I talked to their assistant coach, Malik Boynton, and they got 2 years ago, they had 13 players come to their off-season workouts. They're up to 120 this year. They're actually wanting to play football, and they want to turn this thing around. So could start against Nimitz on Thursday night. They're playing them right off the bat.
I'm going to go ahead and get my flowers open. I'm calling it right now. In the streak, Sam Houston ending the streak.
Oh, interesting.
Against
there
Irving
we go.
Nimitz.
Right off the bat. And that's good, too.
Because we're not playing North Crowley in the first week anymore. Like, what was North Crowley thinking scheduling that for the last 2 years? Just not good for anybody.
All right, let's talk about our last segment, our fantasy segment, our weekly fantasy games. Not games, but we're going to go up against each other. We're going to talk about we're picking a quarterback, a running back, and receiver. Next week, we'll tell you who wins each week.
And all that matters, Ward, I'm going to call the rules is we're just going to add up yards. Touchdowns don't matter. Interceptions don't matter. We're going to add up all 3 yards, the passing yards and running yards. If you receive whatever yards you get that we can find, we're going to add it up and we're going to have a number. And whoever has the bigger number will win. So you're looking for, not necessarily a team a guy's going to throw for 6 touchdowns. You want a player who's going to throw for 400 yards. You're going to want a running back who's going to run for 200 yards, maybe get 100 yards out of the backfield and receiving. And you're going to want a receiver who can put up 100 or 200 yards and maybe even go a little bit of Deebo Samuel on you and maybe get a little bit of a running play here and there to get you some yardage. So I know, Ward, I'm expected to destroy you in this, but at the same time, because we have a rule that you can't use the same players every week, I feel like in week 1, I got to go a little more conservative because we're going to learn a lot. So, we can't just go, you might do this, but I just can't go Khalil Lockett in week 1 and, just kind of the big names because I feel like I got to save them for very specific weeks because, you don't want to put Khalil Lockett when Saxey is playing South Garland. Right. Because they're going to pull him out real early. So you want that game to be a game where, okay, maybe a Wiley East where he has a chance to shine. So I feel like you got to use a little bit of strategy here, Ward. And I don't know, talking to you, if you are the strategy sort of guy. So I'm a little bit nervous
I'm definitely not the strategy sort of guy since I learned the rules seconds before we got on the podcast. I didn't realize we were going yards. But I've already picked my guys. Let's start with you, though. Let's start with quarterback. We'll go quarterback for each of us, and then tell me who you got going this week at quarterback.
Quarterback, I'm going to take Colton Nussmeier. I think he's going to make a good first. I think Keller is going to be a 48-minute game. You're going to go back and forth. I think there's going to be some mistakes. You're going to have some young kids in the Keller secondary, and I think Marcus likes to throw it around quite a bit. So I'm going to take for my quarterback Colton Nussmeier from Flower Mound Marcus to give me the yards.
Excellent. I'm going to go with Charlie Peters because I think he will stick around for a little while, and they're going to be tossing that thing around forever at Jesuit in that game. I think he's going to give me the most. I thought he was going to give me the most touchdowns, but apparently that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean a thing. So I'm still going with him anyway for yardage. I think that's going to be a sweet pickup for me for this week. Diggsy, let's talk about running back.
Well, running back, I'm going to go a little bit non-traditional. I'm going to pick Andrew Casagrande from Richardson Pierce because last year he had over 250 yards per game in total yardage every single of those 4 games. He did great at receiving. He did great at running back, and now he's going to be back and he's going to be healthy. And it gives me a chance to put him in early so that I can see how the running back situation kind of pans out. So I'm going to take Andrew Casagrande as my running back fantasy yardage guy.
Fantasy yardage guy. Excellent. Well, I'm going with Josh Bell out of Trinity. I think they're going to go back and forth between him and James Harris, but this is probably one of those things where you're thinking, you're not using any strategy because he'll get all these yards all the time. But I am using some strategy because I think this is the time if I'm going to struggle at quarterback and maybe receiver, then I'm going to get my points in running back. I got to do it that route. But that's who I got going at running back. So who do you have at receiver?
Well, I feel like we have enough receivers to where we can use big receivers throughout the year. But, then I'm going to be looking at matchups. I think a game that's going to be high scoring is going to be that Red Oak versus Colleyville Heritage game. So I'm going to take Taz Williams, the Red Oak wide receiver, to be my guy who is going to put me over the edge and get those points for me to beat you, Wizzy. Taz Williams Jr., Taz beats Wiz, going to take it home for me this week.
Well, that's interesting because that's who I had, so I'm going to have to change mine on the fly here because I let you go first.
We could both have them. That could be your pick.
All right, well, that's going to be my pick because that's what
I
had originally.
You see the same thing I see. It's okay. That means you're right about something, Wizzy, which is
because when we went down there and talked to Taz as interview that we did, all the receivers were talking about how excited they are about the new quarterback, and they were more excited about it than what you've been hearing. They're thinking this guy is going to be able to really show and prove. I forgot who he said transfer in from somewhere.
From Arkansas.
From Arkansas,
but his coach wouldn't name him the starter in the morning news. So,
all right, well, let's say a month ago when I was out there, they were very excited about him. So now it looks like they may not be as excited, but you got speedsters like him and Braden. You just chuck it up there, and they're gonna, like you said, they're gonna need to score points. So I think that's a good way to get us both on the same. We're both picking them. That's the way it's got to be. All right, Dixie.
Charlie Peters versus Colton Nussmeyer and Andrew Casagrande versus Josh Bell. So that's going to be our battle.
That'll be the two battle, and the other points just come along as we go. So let's hope Josh Bell gets a little crazier at running back and see how we end up here with our little weekly fantasy joint because God knows I need some bragging rights for something. I have a feeling I might get beat 10 out of the 11 weeks, but if I can start off nice in week one, that'd be awesome.
Diggs, I think the kids are actually going to love this because, you're going to get a clip that we believe in you, and it's going to go viral every single week. You're going to put it up on the TikTok or whatever, and it's going to be passed around like, okay, so this is the kid that we think is going to have the biggest numbers out of all the kids of all, because we're picking you. So it'll be. We'll see how good we are, but I think it's going to give the kids a little bit of incentive. Like, okay, we're digging for wisdom. We got to go out there, and you got Charlie Peters is going to make Wizzy proud with a 500-yard day against T-Bird.
Exactly. Have Josh Bell saying, "Hey, Coach Lineweaver, can you keep me in for the fourth quarter? I know we're up 25. Keep me in there, man. I got to get some points from my man Wizard. Please, will you?" It all starts this week, Diggs. I'm pretty excited about it, man. We are going to turn on these lights, and we're going to see some football, and it's going to be a fun week. It starts tonight, Thursday, and we'll see what happens. Diggs, I know I'll see you at a bunch of these games, so we'll revisit some of our stuff, especially on Saturday. We'll kind of revisit our weekly fantasy stuff and see who ended up winning that thing. Probably should have picked.
What do you got on the show this week? I know you're starting to produce stories every week now. We got big stories.
Well, the Sam Houston thing, that's why I brought it up, because we're doing a story on the culture change over there at Sam Houston. I met their principal, and he's like a 3-time bodybuilding champion. Now he's in his 50s or 60s, so he's kind of let all that crazy girth go away, but he's still built like a brick house. I was going to say something else. He's built like a brick house.
A brick house.
Exactly. So if he told me what to do, I would, I was in his office. He said, "Yeah, if we tell the kids not to chew gum, don't wear a hat." And I took mine off right away. I said, "I don't want no trouble." But we're going to talk about the culture change there at Sam Houston. Like I said, the Country Roads is back, and we're heading to Godley to see how that new stadium looks against Alvarado. We got Next Level with Kenny. He's going to be talking about them running backs at South Carroll, where they might be ending up in the next level, of course. Riley Werman and Davis Penn. And, of course, tons and tons of highlights, which I'm looking forward to finally getting some. It's going to be a good week. Diggs,
absolutely.
See you later, Diggs.